Picture a classroom full of roofers at one of the country's best business schools. For 22 years, today's guest is the reason it exists. More than 200 roofing executives owe their careers to it, graduating in 10 classes. By 1999, Tom Shanahan had already spent a decade guiding NRCA's safety work. When a committee handed him an idea nobody had tried before. Before NRCA, Tom worked 11 years at hotels, learning how to run a room long before he ran a movement. He also chaired a national fall prevention work group and served on federal safety committees. In 2024, his program won a training award. Tom believes roofing doesn't have a skills problem. It has a leadership development problem. Today, we get to talk with the man behind it all. Tom, welcome to the Tie-In.
Tom Shanahan, Bilous, Steve Reiss, live here on the Tie-In. Tom, first impressions while you've been patiently waiting for your appearance on the show this morning.
Oh, this is a fascinating conversation. I think it's great. I love it.
Awesome. Steve, shall we get into it, Tom? You want to kick it off, my brother?
Yeah. Tom, how you doing today, man?
Doing great, Steve. Great to see you again. 2 weeks in a row. How about
that? Great to see you as well. It's definitely a different setting this time than it was last week, isn't it?
Absolutely.
All right, Tom. So you ready to get into this conversation, man?
I am. Thanks.
Let's do it. So, Tom, most people know you as NRCA's risk and safety guy for over 3 decades. What a lot of folks don't know is that in 1999, that same job handed you something totally different. Building a leadership program for roofing contractors from a committee's idea into what became the Future Executives Institute. Take us back to that moment. What made you say yes to building something that that didn't exist yet?
Well, my career, like you mentioned, the hotel business, and it really had always been about teaching and training and educating folks. And so when I got the job, in addition to the risk management job, to run the education department at NRCA, we work with committees, and we had just done NRCA had just done a national survey with the Gallup industry. And one of the things of that thing before anticipating the millennium, and one of the things that it said was that the foremen were the most dissatisfied of all levels in a roofing company. And as I thought about that, I knew exactly why, because I remember when I went at the front desk from being a clerk to being in charge of the clerks. On Friday you're having a beer with them, and on Monday you're in charge of them. And so then there's like no training for that. There's no training for being the person that's in charge. And so that was, after complaining to my wife about it for a while, she's like, "Hey, you're the one with the degree in managing. Start managing, as your wife will do." And I started thinking about that. It's a really interesting dynamic. And so I told the committee, "Hey, I can write a program on leading, managing, and communicating. Those are the 3 variables that I learned over my time to be dealing with." And so I did that. It was very popular. And so that was really the seed for the committee to be like, in fact, Lisa Sprick, who was a former chairman of the board, was on that committee, but 20 some years ago. And she's like, "Hey, I want something for my son who's going to take over this business that teaches him how to be these things." And so, as typical, wonderful working with roofing contractors, she was the one, and they on the committee were like, "Oh, yes." Because back then, 25 years ago, roofing industry is still predominantly family businesses. And so the idea of who's going to take over for the mom and dad was always top of mind. And they wanted something that really helped them learn, because many of them had degrees as well. But roofing is such a unique animal that they all knew that we needed something special that was for roofing contractors. And so that's the genesis of it. And then from there, we worked for 3 years, that committee, and developed a program that was really always about leadership. The idea is, we know how to do the work, but we don't know how to necessarily tell others and get them to care about this work the way that we care about this work.
Yeah.
And of course, my classes, Steve, that the caring thing to me is the leadership link. How do I care, and how do we get them to care? And everything is about about that dynamic.
That's fascinating, Tom. And something that you mentioned there that that is really the thread of your entire course that you teach is this leading, you got managing, and what ties those things together, like you say, the communication, right? And so could you speak to that a little bit more? I mean, what is what is it about leading that isn't managing and managing that isn't leading that has to get married together?
Great question.
Yeah, as I teach at so one of the things that was fascinating to me years ago, I looked up the word leading in the dictionary, and if you looked at the synonyms, the word managing was in the synonyms, and if you look at the word managing, the word leading was in the synonyms. Well, that made me want to look up the word synonyms because I was thinking, well, what is it? And so synonyms means two words that mean almost exactly the same thing. And so I think that's where a lot of the confusion with leading and managing comes from, is that they are so tightly packed to each other that we're never really sure what one is and the other isn't. And so I developed this metaphor, because I'm a real visual person, of that first off, leading and managing are no more important than each other. They're equally important. And the idea of a quarter, right? So if you have a quarter, you have a head side and tail side, they're inextricable, but you can tell the difference. And so the idea of having talent in an organization that is equally strong at leading and managing, we have tons of management experience in the business because it's a service business, right? And so everything is about being on time, being on schedule, on cost, all those things safely, all the management metrics. That's the management side. But how do we get the people that do it to care about this? And so, that's that equal thing there, right, in the quarter. But the tying in is communication skills are always what is necessary. So that's the truth. So communicating well is what ties those two things together, but they are equally important. I think that's so important to understand that they're different, but they're inextricable. They work this way. So if you're over managing, you're gonna have a leadership problem. If you're over leading, you're gonna have a management problem. So that just getting that balance right is challenging, but recognizing that it's there in the first place is like, oh, and so that was.
Oh, Tom just muted yourself. Hey, you're with Keith, Steve, and Tom live here on the tie. And Tom, you just muted yourself at the button. You hit a button there, Tom, and there you go. There you go. Keep your there you go, bud. Yeah.
Anyway, so so that was what was really interesting to me. And so then as I learned that in the hotel business, kind of just more functionally, when I went to Kellogg, I was just focused on trying to understand this dynamic, and then did and was able to articulate it better. So for teaching, and
yeah,
I love teaching it.
Steve, Tom just mentioned he went to Kellogg, and we mentioned that in the opener. And Tom, you hold an MBA from Northwestern's Kellogg School of Management, not a small little school, and FEI ended up being built right there on Kellogg's campus. So here's the question: how much of what you learned as a student fed into the program that you designed for ultimately roofing contractors, Tom?
Yeah, well, I just want to say it's no, takes a village. That's the idea. So our members, when I worked on that committee, we developed this idea of 3 years, of these 10 course tracks, of the idea that it's a leadership program first, and then it's a networking program. So the idea that it's both, and that roofing contractors, experts are there helping teach certain classes. So the idea that, and Kellogg was the vehicle. At the time, we had a consultant from Kellogg, Karen Cates, who was working at NRCA, who was my coach, and she helped us. And NRCA had just previously done a program at the University of Chicago's Booth School, and so we were already kind of in the mindset of, and that was so successful, the idea that having an excellent academic institution to kind of partner with, which is what we did. So it's not a university program, but it's a program held at the university and using their instructors. And so that was really important to us, to the committee, to have that experience, when you're actually on campus at school and having those people. There's just something about that's a unique cachet that is just really, I mean, Steve, I'd have to ask you, right? Isn't it kind of cool being there?
It is amazing being there. I agree wholeheartedly with what you're saying, and just being back in the classroom setting, right? Ohio State is my alma mater, and so it
Oh,
is very reminiscent of being back, in school. And I loved college. I loved learning. I love being in the classroom. I love developing relationships with my professors, and so I feel like I'm it's nostalgic for me, to be quite honest. And the amount of education and relationship building that happens in that classroom is even more so than anything I ever experienced at Ohio State, just because it's a more intimate program.
And I would argue too that you've got, I'm sorry, I would argue too that one of the things that makes it feel better is you've been working for a while. So you understand these things from a practical level now. And so
Yes.
the things that we're teaching, now have kind of a home in terms of these different experiences that because you're out there, feeling alone as a manager and a leader and having to do things that make decisions, and that's what that program really helps you feel more confident about, I think.
so I got a question, I think, for both of you. And this is interesting because, Steve, in many ways, Steve, this question might be better for George, but maybe you can interpret it as well. Because Tom and Lisa Sprick said something too. So I got a lot coming at you guys here. Because convincing an industry built on physical work, so Steve, ears up for George, convincing an industry built on physical work that its future leaders, he's like, wait a minute. You mean Steve needs to be a business school educated person? It probably was no small feat, Tom, back in 1999 to sell people on that. Yet, when you were building FEI off the ground, what are the early years of convincing people? And maybe I want to start with Steve. Like, growing up in the family business, did Dad and did some of the management that have been around for a while, did they all recognize that we needed to send Steve and the future leaders to business school education, that this is not the physical work of yesterday? Steve, I want to start with you on that one.
Well, John, our president,
Yeah.
he's an FEI grad,
Okay.
and so I think over the years, and he went from high school to roofing, right? And
Yeah.
so he didn't have an undergrad experience. He didn't at that point in time, back in what would be the late '80s, early '90s. He didn't need, you didn't need that.
It's the 1890s, right? We're talking like John Kiesel, the 1880s, 1890s, right? Like that
Correct.
long ago, right? Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so, to be in the trades, you didn't necessarily need that. Would it have been helpful potentially? But you know, John coming up from the field and being the executive in our company,
Yeah.
and then going through FEI, that taught him so much. And the term that he likes to use for this is he became enlightened, right? Like he became enlightened in so many different ways to this whole idea of leading and managing. Because if you were to ask him, like, what were you like prior to
Yes.
FEI, he would say that he was probably kind of a dictatorial type of manager, right?
Rough around the edges, perhaps, right?
Yeah, because as we're in a tough business. You have to get things
Yes.
done.
Yes.
But I do think that we're kind of evolving. Society's kind of evolving in a way, and we need the softer skills of leading and
Yeah.
being able to inspire people rather than just getting it done. Now, do we still need to get it done? Absolutely. But I think that there's a dynamic there that is playing out where we need more leadership.
Yeah, great answer. And so then, Tom, throwing it to you, what were those early years of trying to convince people that this is the future? What was that like, Tom?
Well, like I said, as a result of that Gallup survey, I had written a program for roofing contract for foreman. It was called For Foreman Only,
Yeah.
and it was leading, managing, communicating, all the stuff that I'm teaching now. Less refined, but that was so popular, and those foremen just ate it up because they knew. I mean, initially they're like, what's this going to be about? Kind of like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Very salt of the earth. You got to prove your work. And so when they started hearing me talk about this stuff, and of course the hotel business that I had practical, dealing with, I was director of housekeeping, so I had to keep 750 rooms clean, staff of 150 people. I understood what it was like from a production standpoint, and those foremen really resonated. So we had some groundswell from the foremen we were teaching who were going back to their bosses saying, hey, you need this. Basically, it was kind of that way. And then, of course, we had the committee who, they're all those committee people are fantastic. They're all salespeople. They're like, we'll get the word out. So I ended up spending a lot of time. I always felt like I hated sales, but I spent a lot of time it really wasn't selling as much as I was just sharing what this could do. And it was hard. I mean, I was spent the first 3, 4 classes of FEI, so 8, 9 years of a lot of selling, but word of mouth kept building,
Mm,
and to the point there now where it's, I didn't have to do that anymore after about FEI 4. So
yeah.
8 years or so into the program. But that's a lot. Still, 8 years sounds like, I mean, with 25, it sounds like nothing. But at the time, it was, like you said, it wasn't so much convincing that it was needed. It was more like getting people to allow themselves, having somebody leave for a week and then be able to study, and those things that we were requiring to be done. And that was the thing that really, I think, the word of mouth helped, because guys, there's never a good time to leave a roofing business, for
So
a week. And
Steve, you have been through the FEI program, right? And right, am I correct? That's
I'm
just
in,
right.
I'm in it right now.
No, okay, awesome.
I'm exactly at the halfway point.
Perfect, because then as I asked Tom this question, I want you to lead into the follow up of it, because it goes like this. So since 2002, FEI has graduated more than 200 roofing executives, real people now running real companies. So Tom, let's start with you. What's the difference that you see between the emerging leader who walks in on day one, Chicago session, to the guy who walks out in 3 years later? And then Steve, after Tom answers, I'm going to come back to you. What are you seeing in yourself as a leader halfway through it, and then maybe what you're predicting yourself to see a year and a half from now? So Tom, what are you seeing with these leaders walking in and then walking out 3 years later?
well, first off, not to brag, but we have over 300 graduates of the program, which is
Nice.
quite cool. And I think confidence is the word that I would use. They come in as all freshmen do, kind of wide-eyed, and what
Yeah.
was this about? And we kind of have to prove ourselves to them in a way, and I think that happens pretty quickly. But the idea of learning in that environment from folks that are industry people, that are also academic folks like me, but also the academics and also their industry experts, all of that kind of demystifies the industry. We also meet at our convention every year, and we bring industry icons to our luncheons as speakers. So it has this effect of demystifying things. I think it helps them see this. Hey, we're all people, and so I think they walk away because they've learned a lot of good stuff, and they have a lot of good experience to marry that with, and they know a lot of folks now. They're friends so much with their classmates, and that network of 300 is out there for them to tap into. So you just don't feel so alone anymore. And that's a huge part of what I teach in terms of, the building relationship is the answer versus isolating yourself, which happens so easily when you're not, when you're just trying to do it all yourself, which is what a manager does. A leadership realizes that they got to reach out to others, and that takes bravery, and that takes confidence. And so I think that's what they leave from. I don't know, Steve, you're halfway through, so maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I'd like to hear Steve's response too. Yeah.
I certainly agree with what Tom's saying. Confidence is a great word for it. I think, from my perspective, I would totally say I'm more confident now than I was, a year and a half ago when I started the program. But I would say wiser. Wiser is the word that comes to mind for me. And I'll give you a perfect example of why I say that. So things that seem mundane on day one, walking in, thinking about, okay, think about this risk management. You've got someone from CNA Insurance there talking about, how do we mitigate risk? Oh my goodness, I could not think of a more boring topic. Okay. Because I'm a people person, I'm a sales guy. Like, what do I care that much about risk management? Well, you should care quite a bit, because if your guys are running around in company vehicles without dash cameras, and you have an incident that happens, a collision, how do you know that could potentially take your company down? Another example, the safety that takes place on roofs. What does your safety program look like? Again, from a sales perspective, right? That's something that I sell. That's what part of why we're more expensive than other companies, is because we do things the right way. But from a classroom perspective, I'm like, oh my goodness, shoot me now, right? Like, I don't necessarily find it super exciting to talk about risk management, but that's why I picked the word wiser, because even though it's not exciting, it's something that we should be understanding and learning about and caring about, not only because, we want our people to go home safe at the end of every day, but because one catastrophic fall can take your entire company straight into the ground. And so we got to be wise about the decisions that we're making and making sure that we're thinking about things from, an all around perspective, not just how do we get sales? How do we bring in revenue? How do we do great marketing? Those are all great things, and also things that are covered in FEI, but it's the more mundane that is very important as well.
The mundane that added that value, right? And as you're going through the class, I'm thinking, Steve, this enlightenment, right? You're like, right, and a lot of value you're getting along the way, right? So that's awesome. Hey, you're hanging out with Keith, Steve, and Tom live on the Tie-In every single Thursday here on the Roofing Authority Network. Got a quick word from Division 7 Roofing. The next generation does not become ready because someone hands them a title. No, they become ready when experienced leaders share judgment, give them real responsibility, and create room to learn. And since 1979, Division 7 has combined proven commercial roofing experience with forward-thinking systems, employee training, and new technology. That is how standards are carried forward. See how they work at division7roofing.com. We're back to the third segment with Keith, Steve, and Tom here live on the Tie-In. Hey, Tom, coming back to you, my friend. In December 2024, the FEI Executive Director role passed to someone else. What part of the program are you most protective of, and the one piece you'd tell whoever runs it next to never change?
Okay, again, like before, I gotta say something that Steve said. Risk management, because I was the risk manager for 30 years. I just can't believe that he did risk management. So nice going. Buttering up the not bad. Anyway, it's really four things. First off, remember it's a leadership program. I became, because I was the one person that was always there representing the initial committee's wishes and vision for this program. I was like the light keeper, and it really is one of those things that over time committees are like, well, we should have a program that talks more about risk management. We'll just pick that, and I'll be like, well, the thing is this is a leadership program. There are plenty of programs out there that can teach you about how to manage risk, right? What we want them to understand is how do they understand their vision so that they make good risk decisions. That's FEI's, that's that balancing of the managing and the leading thing I was talking about. So the leadership aspect of it is key, and then the idea that we it's a networking program as well, and that competes with number one, but it is number two because we really wanted to make sure that, like Steve was saying, that you're walking away wise. I love that word. That's great, Steve. And so that networking is very important. So a lot of the program is about these guys interacting with each other. Third would be that we use industry experts to teach the industry's programs. So like, I was the risk manager, so I taught the risk management segments of that. And now, of course, they're going to find other people to do that stuff. And Steve Phillips, who's like the roofing industry's attorney, he teaches the legal stuff. So that's the third one. And then the fourth one was to keep it at Kellogg. Being in that environment, the cachet, and that when I graduated, it was the number one program in the country. It had been the number one MBA program for years. It still is. Currently, with its program in Hong Kong, it's the number one program in the world. So there's it just has tremendous. It's just a great, and we're lucky because it's here in Chicago, which is where NRCA is, and that's what we just access. So those four things.
Yeah. Steve,
I love that. Something that we talk about in class, Tom, is the hierarchy of needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? And, it'd be so exciting to me, I'm hearing you talk as now a retired, FEI professor, and thinking about what's the self-actualization of a roofing company executive, right? So I think about myself and I'm thinking right now, like, man, industry professionals running the program, you just spoke to that. And I'm thinking like, man, what would satisfy me? What would be super exciting to me is having the honor of being able to run the, sales and marketing portion in 30 years from now at FEI, because I've done it, I've lived it, I've been in the business. So that's where my mind's at the moment. I'm just thinking about that big grand vision of things. And so, we'll keep this this segment here in the archives for a long time. We'll see if that comes to pass.
I love that. Look at that, Tom. Steve's already got the vision for you. He's laying out the future already for you. So, hey, Tom, roofing contractors, they still have a leadership pipeline problem. And actually, if we look at the news of the show, Steve, we might have a labor shortage problem as well with all the roofs being built across North America. So, Tom, there's plenty of skilled operators, not enough trained executives ready to run the business side. So here's the question. After 35 years building the program meant to fix exactly that, as you sit here today with us, what's still unsolved, Tom Shanahan?
I don't know that it's unsolved. I think we have identified the need to have a more leadership presence and sensitivity in the roofing business. Steve will remember, I've used a disc profile for I don't know how many, 25 years now, and I've given it thousands of times to roofing professionals, foremen all the way up to owners. And the thing is that even in Steve's class, 80% of the folks in that class are what are considered managers by disc behavioral standpoint. Only 20% are on the leadership side. And that really hasn't changed in all those years. What I'm hoping is that FEI will affect the appreciation that we need to welcome the personality types that are what we call the influencers and the steadiness folks. In other words, the folks like me, I'm a high I, Steve's a high I, so that's what sales is very typical for I's. But the idea that in the field that we as I's can help help influence others to appreciate what's going on, and the S's can bring the team together. The problem is the I's and S's are more needy folks, and so that doesn't usually sell well on the roof when it's like get it done, get it done, get it done. And so the idea is opening your lens open to appreciate that every one of us has all four of those qualities in us. And it's a matter of, especially at work, developing in the roofing industry this I and the S, which I think is what FEI is doing. And so my hope is, and you're seeing it here, just even doing this, this is amazing what John and Steve are doing with just this program. It's about helping others see there's more than just the chop, 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 because you're doing that chop, chop, chop with people, and they're like, screw you if you're not helping them be all they can be.
I'm not laughing at you. I was having a chat this morning with John Kiesel about chopping on our text this morning. So you're hanging out with Tom Shanahan, Keith Bilous, Steve Reiss, and Tom Wolf. I see you there in the comments. I appreciate you doing this. And Tom, I just accepted your LinkedIn request as well. We are live. Tom Wolf's joining us in the comments here. I appreciate you doing this. This will be really helpful for a variety of job titles. Steve, I like to always kind of like pull like a question out of the blue for our guests.
Yeah,
I got one today for Tom.
You're good at that.
So Tom, you've been doing this for a long time, and you're doing it very successfully for a long time. There's got to be one thing that I'm thinking that surprises you today that you could not have imagined. You're like, geez, I'm surprised by that. After all these years, I'm still surprised that this is either happening, not happening. When you wake up today, Tom, what still surprises you today?
That still surprises me. It's going to be an odd answer. I'm sure that's what you're looking for. I have always been so wonderfully surprised at how wonderful the roofing contracting community is.
Yeah.
I was in the hotel business, which was a wonderful group, and I still have friends from there. But the roofing, what still surprises me is that on balance, roofing workers, roofing owners, company owners, and I think that's changing, still feel a little bit like they're the black-haired stepchild or whatever that word is.
Yeah.
That we are less than. And I tell you, I think foremen are the smartest people on the planet. I mean, and I mean that sincerely. I've been in classes, and I'm just always like, oh my gosh, I don't, what they have to shoulder dealing with customers, dealing with specifications that are constantly changing, all of the folks that they got to get that work done. they're geniuses. And so and you go all the way through the company, and I think that's right. And they're just the most salt of the earth, funny people, and smart as hell. It still surprises me that they think that they're not, or something. I don't know what the right word is, but there's this like,
it's like a big, so you know what, Tom? So I'm new to the industry. I've been invited in doing this show with Steve, Tom, and Ryan. I'm very grateful for that whole experience. And Steve, I'm going to come to you in a quick second. I think I can observe what you're saying. Like it's like there's a big imposter syndrome situation, isn't there, Tom? And then I talked to like John Kiesel. I talked to Steve and Ryan. Brilliant people. Like extremely brilliant people, and like, but yet I think it's because the industry has been, I'm just broad painting, it's blue collar, it's this, it's all the hard work, but yet some pretty freaking smart people up there. Steve, take Tom's comments, and what I saw you nodding there. Well, what are you thinking about this?
Well, funny enough, I was just having a conversation this morning with our above the line guest, and I don't want to give any spoilers away, but I was having a conversation this morning with Kutch, and he was asking me some questions about the roofing industry, and I'm like, similar to Tom's answer, I'm like, man, it takes a real artistic mind, for someone to see the details on the spec sheet, okay, and then go and perform it. And I'm like, I'm blown away by that. I do not have an artistic bone in my body. I've tried to do some light contracting with, remodeling my basement and things like that. And it takes me forever, and I go back and rewatch these YouTube videos because I can see it play out right on the screen, or I can look at a spec book and I can see it, but then I try to go back and do it, and I can't do it. And so I don't want to give anything away, but in the FEI program, there's an exercise that we do, and the appreciation of teams is really elevated in this particular exercise, because you have to, different people, you have to build something. You have to go look at something and then come back and build it. And I was struggling. I did contribute to the team in certain aspects, but then, there's other guys that are the builders. There's other guys that are the architects, and there's other guys that are just there to communicate information to the other folks that can take it and run with it. And I think that that's fascinating in this industry and so many others like roofing. But any industry where, you're looking at specs and plans and then having to go implement it is an art to me. And I have a vast appreciation for that.
Yeah. What a great conversation today. Tom, I've thoroughly enjoyed this with you, my friend. I know that we were setting it up. Maybe there was and I also want to say this, I'm grateful that you moved your calendar for us. I know you had to make some changes. So thank you for that. And I hope you enjoyed your time with us as much as I know I enjoyed with you. Any closing comments, questions, anything you'd like to say before we wrap up with Tom Shanahan today?
No, just keep going to FEI, you guys. I mean, who's ever out there, it's a fantastic program. Yeah, it's I feel like it's a Maserati of adult education.
It is.
Yeah. Steve, closing comments for you before we walk. Sorry, Steve, closing comments for Tom before we walk him out?
No, yeah, I certainly agree with what Tom said. It is the Maserati of learning programs in the roofing industry. And I would encourage anyone that, is in a roofing company to consider the FEI program. And, we have amazing professors like Tom there to teach us, industry veterans, and bringing experience from other companies like Tom's experience in the hotel industry, and how that correlates so well to leading and managing people. And it's a beautiful thing. So Tom, thank you so much for joining us again. And I'm so glad that you're able to make the time.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Tom, thanks for hanging out with us today live on the Tie-In with Keith Bilous, Steve Reiss, and Tom Shanahan.